अब्दुल साहब आप म्यूट हैं। वेलकम। Participants are joining in. Subra, you are live and you can start with the permission of chairperson.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and a very good evening to our esteemed speakers and participants attending this webinar. This is Samra Sarwar from Education and Training Department of ICAP, welcoming you all to the webinar on countering fraud, cybercrime, and use of cutting-edge forensic investigation techniques, an initiative of Digital Assurance and Accounting Board of ICAP. Before we begin with the event, I would like to begin the event with the recitation of the Holy Quran, followed by national anthem. Would request IT to please play the tilawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Let's please rise up for the national anthem. Well, in order to formally begin with our today's event, I would like to invite Ms. Khurshid Kotwal, Chairperson Digital Assurance and Accounting Board, Council Member ICAP, to brief a little about this webinar. Ms. Khurshid is a double qualified professional, being a fellow chartered accountant and fellow corporate secretary. She is a certified director, chairperson of risk committees, and board member of Microfinance Network. An elected council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan. Currently, she chairs the Digital Assurance and Accounting Board. She's the founder and chief executive of the management consultancy Asman International. Ms. Khurshid has been affiliated with Unilever for 18 years in leading positions as the first female corporate finance director, chief auditor, corporate controller, treasurer, information security officer, unit head, safety, health, and environment. Ma'am, please.
Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Ashfaq Tola, Vice President Asad Firoz, Guest of Honor, Mr. Ghazanfar Shah and Hussein Sayed, Special Guest of Honor, Mr. Varaich, our esteemed speakers of today's sessions, friends and colleagues from the fraternity and business community, a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. Our purpose of today's webinar is crucial to explore the multifaceted domain of countering frauds, cybercrimes, and learn about the cutting-edge technologies, forensic investigation tools that can be applied. Old scams never die, and new ones are popping up fast every day. From sophisticated AI-generated fake videos, which are called deep fakes, to phishing attacks, that is sending out fraudulent emails and text messages that appear to and come from a reputed source. Criminals are constantly finding new ways to steal information and money. Those as our bankers or familiar stores, either the tax or the government authorities. They hack into accounts. Recent data of the USA shows that in 2022, it lost 8.8 billion to fraud, an astounding number which is up by more than 30%. The most common fraud is the imposter scam. That is a dishonest person who lies and tricks you into giving your information and sending them the money or stealing your money. Then we have the online shopping and the negative review scams, the check frauds and the investment-related scams. The credit cards are the most frequent prevailing payment method used for fraudulent activities. Fraud is often so well disguised that it is usually too late for us to realize that we've been fooled. Typically, scammers would play on our fears, like your bank account has been hacked, your credit card has been blocked, or you have not paid some of your taxes with the government authorities, and you have to act fast. And before you can think, they have taken and swindled your money away. Vigilance is key. What are the guidelines that can help us sidestep such con games? We should be suspicious of unknown calls, emails, and other communications. Instead, contact the source of the message used by a verified channel. We should not use phone links and numbers that are given by these scammers or by incoming calls. Again, we should not trust caller IDs as well. Scammers can often spoof calls, IDs to make it look authentic. Today, even on WhatsApp, like some of your friends can be shown as sending messages or calling you, but they're not actually your friends who are making these calls. So everything is possible today. And don't be tempted by the prizes or the free cash scammers that often use to promise the prizes, etc., and lure the individuals to give their private information. Cybersecurity tools and tech advancements, that is AI-powered fraud detection systems, data analytics, blockchain-based data transactions monitoring can effectively detect and prevent fraudulent activities. Our discussions today will be guided by a stellar lineup of experts and thought leaders, each of whom will bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to the table. Today's webinar is just the tip of the iceberg. In addition, let me tell you that the ICAP's Digital Assurance and Accounting Board has recently introduced a comprehensive training program of 44 hours over the weekends called Technology Assurance Certificate, for which the registrations are open and you can find the details on the ICAP website. The module 7 of this training is all about data privacy, information, and cybersecurity. I would urge all finance, audit, IT, risk, business managers to register for this certification program to gain insights on the importance of IT controls, IT governance, IT security, and compliances. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your thoughtful insights regarding the rationale behind organizing this webinar. Adding further, I would like to take a moment to announce that cohort 2 of Technology Assurance Certificate Program is live for registrations, and you can find detailed brochure on ICAP's website. The program is specifically tailored to equip professionals with the skills and knowledge required to effectively assess and improve the security and risk management of the organization's technology system. Well, let's move forward with the program. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue with the exciting proceedings, and please welcome Mr. Ashfaq Yusuf Tola on stage. Mr. Tola is a distinguished figure in Pakistan, served as former Minister of State, Chairman of the Reforms and Resource Mobilization Commission, Chairman of the Anomaly Committee, and member of the board at the Privatization Commission. He is also a prominent member at the South Asian Federation of Accountants and a former president and an elected member of the Council of ICAP. With over 30 years of experience and a profound interest in the Pakistani economy, Mr. Tola possesses extensive knowledge across 40 jurisdictions. Notably, he co-authored the report on the provincial taxation system. I would like to invite our chief guest, Mr. Ashfaq Tola, to share his views on ICAP's plan for the digital forensic investigation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Dishan Sa, Mr. Mohammad Sen Syed, Mr. Rashid Kotwal, Firoz, and distinguished participant of this seminar or webinar. I welcome you all at this coveted and a very well organized seminar being conducted by the DAB of ICAP. Friends, basically this DAB was formed in 2019 and Syed Najmul Hussain was the first chairman of DAB. Thereafter, due to the engagement, our another worthy member, Anna Muhammad Usman, was shouldering this responsibility. And during his era, we started quite a few initiatives. The foremost initiative which we started was the digital analytics, data analytic course, which was basically designed by myself. And prior to that, the Regional Committee Southern Region was organizing this program. But we have done it on an extensive basis, and it was an exhaustive program which really turned many chartered accountants into data scientists as well. And then thereafter, we have started program for the students on SAP. I think the journey was not stopping there. Now we have got a technology auditor certificate, and moving further, we are shaking hand with the Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan for fraud investigation on data analytics. So this is very cumbersome and a very delicate program which we conducted along with SECP last month, and it was successfully conducted by the DAP. And thankful to Khurshid and her team, including Ahmadul Hassan Nayat and their team for organizing it very meaningfully. So I think DAB is doing a fantastic job transforming accountants into data analysts and data scientists, and none other than Khurshid can do it. But let me just tell you the role of our worthy office bearers, including our dynamic president, Mohammad Ali Latif, and Asad Firoz and Arsalan. They are definitely helping Khurshid in fulfilling his program. So I think without losing time, let me just hand over this mic to the Master of Ceremony for moving forward with this program. Thank you very much, Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving forward, I would like to welcome our esteemed guest of honor, Mr. Ghazanfar Shah, who is a certified fraud examiner, a certified anti-money laundering specialist, a licensed CPA from Colorado, and a fellow chartered certified accountant from the UK. He's a senior managing director heading K2 Integrity's investigation and disputes practice in the Middle East with more than 20 years of experience performing complex investigations across the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, Europe, and the United States. Mr. Ghazanfar specializes in fraud investigations, forensic accounting, and disputes across multi-jurisdictional borders. He has led most of the prominent Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and UK Bribery Act violations in the last decade. We'll request Mr. Ghazanfar to please introduce our audience with emerging trends of fraud around the globe.
Thank you, Samra. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I wanted to thank Khurshid especially for organizing this event with all my esteemed colleagues, Hussein, Amar, Shariq Saab, Zishan Saab, and the others as well. This is one of the topics that's, in the last couple of years has actually taken quite an interest in a lot of people because, unfortunately so, because a lot of people either have suffered personally from a form of digital or cyber fraud, or definitely know of someone who has suffered from this as well. So I would like to basically just start off with my presentation. I hope everyone can see. Anayat, if you can confirm that the screen is being shared and I'm in presentation mode. Is it working okay, Anayat, please, or anyone?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Thank you, Anayat. Excellent. So the topic that I was given today, and Khurshid and I had some back and forth on this, was to try and make it more meaningful, not just for the participants, but for Pakistan as well. Now, fraud in itself, as Khurshid has mentioned in her opening speech as well, has continuously evolved, and there's always emerging trends. I remember when I started the field of fraud investigations, the way we conducted fraud was completely different. Even the courses that we studied in university were very limited around what fraud on how to investigate fraud. But now they have masters in fraud investigations that you can invite call a fraud that you can actually undertake. So the field has evolved, but of course, the world is continuously evolving as well. So that means we have to continuously evolve as well. I just wanted to start off with, just some snippets of what's happening in the news. And a lot of these news headlines are something that you guys have either heard or have similarly seen or read these kind of news around. Every other week, at least in the UAE where I'm based, there is some headline or some training that the UAE government is providing to its citizens and enforcing upon banks and other organizations to educate and train their employees as well around online and cyber fraud. But with the emergence of ChatGPT and AI, fraud continuously and in the last couple of years has evolved enormously. It's just become a completely new ballpark, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the emerging trends. But the way of conducting fraud is always interesting because fraudsters are always looking to find new and innovative ways to defraud you, which means we have to come up with new and innovative tools, techniques, and measurements to basically combat and detect and prevent fraud and investigate it, which means the regulators also have to be kept abreast and keep evolving with the times. So fraud by its very nature is very hard to detect. And it's because the fraudsters have to find new ways to defraud. So AI, the use of deepfake, as Khurshid mentioned, and mimicking of voices and videos, and just the more emergence of everything being done online with e-commerce and online banking and online commerce, it just makes it a very, very dangerous time and for us to be vigilant. So what I wanted to do was basically just take a step back and talk about the introduction to how all these technologies are working. So the digital landscape has changed in the last year. I remember when we first got a computer, it was a completely different computer to the ones that we have. My phone is, I think, 10 times faster than the first computer I even owned, and has way more memory and capacity as well, which means a lot of information is right now held and stored on my own personal device, which allows any fraudster that can hack into my phone to have at least every aspect of my life opened up to them. The advancements in technology and artificial intelligence have become the biggest threats, but they're also the biggest tools that allow us to fight fraud as well. Because of the size and enormity of data, investigating fraud 10 years ago versus what's happening right now, and we'll talk about some statistics that I'll show later, is very different. Previously, we could go through accounting records very quickly, go through email records very quickly, but now with the size of gigabytes and exabytes and petabytes of data, in order to detect and investigate fraud, it just becomes very challenging, which means we have to continuously evolve our investigative processes, identify patterns and tools to investigate and find anomalies in data and identify unusual activity. But technology on its own, and this is one of the quotes that I really liked and wanted to share with you, that technology on its own is merely a conversation piece. True innovation is only realized when the right professionals put it to good use. Simply put, advancements in technology both create an opportunity and a threat. In the right hands, it can help people, make people's life easier. But in the wrong hands, it can open up Pandora's box. So before we move on to the emerging trends of fraud, what I wanted to do was take a step back and talk about investigation and forensic investigation, because if you understand how investigations and forensic investigations are carried out, then you can understand what the impact towards all these trends on investigation is. So from an investigation point of view, it's simply the act or process of investigating, a careful search or examination to discover facts. At the end of the day, an investigation is to discover facts. It is up to the legal proceedings to determine who was at fault and what the penalties are and the regulators. And what is forensics? It is also known as criminalistics and is a science to criminal and civil laws. It is governed by legal standards of admissible evidence and criminal procedures. And it's a broad field utilizing numerous practices such as digital forensics that we're talking about today and forensic accounting investigations. What is a forensic investigation? Building on an investigation, a forensic investigation typically involves gathering and collecting data. And 10 years ago, that data was small. Now it's petabytes, terabytes, and exabytes of data. Using that data and applying a scientific method to evaluate, interrogate that data, looking historically and retrospectively, and making a determination of what happened. Forensic accounting builds on that, and it's basically to identify damages caused by these actions in order to find quantifiable evidence that can be used in criminal proceedings. So, what are the objectives? It's to gather enough evidence through forensic tools to prove or disprove an allegation, suspicion, or another issue. And the goals are to determine whether a crime has been committed, legally obtain information or evidence so it can be used in a court of law, identify persons involved, and a fourth objective, which is now becoming more and more popular, is enforcement. Why is this becoming more popular? Because previously, when you determined a crime had been committed, you used chain of custody and other legally methods of obtaining evidence. The end result was you identified that a crime had been committed, people were responsible, but there was nothing that can be done. So a lot of companies were then figuring out what to do, whether it was any worth of having an investigation being done, throwing good money after bad if there was no recoverability. With enforcement action by regulators and companies, it now allows companies to go after criminals and try to recover money as well. And that's through asset tracing and other methods, which is a completely different topic, but is important because one of the goals of forensic investigation is, yes, we have identified what went wrong and who was responsible, but whether or not we can recover money is a very important objective to all the shareholders as well. So now that we've talked about what an investigation is, that will allow us to basically understand how the landscape of fraud investigations is evolving. I put together some statistics that I think will be really interesting. Some of you guys may have already know about these statistics, but it just shows how much technology is becoming a part of our life and how vulnerable every one of us is. Number of smart devices that analyze and collect data should hit 50 billion by 2030. Internet penetration is around 63%. Computing and processing capacity hits double figures every 18 months. I think this number will go down from the months point of view. I think every 12 months, and then every 6 months, the computing and processing capacity will keep on increasing. The world will produce 463 exabytes of data by 2025. In order for you to understand what an exabyte is, just imagine it's 1 million gigabytes. By 2030, 500 billion devices will be connected to the internet, and 5 billion people are currently using the internet. We all use Google, and about 8.5 billion times a day are queries that are sent to Google, which is all the data that they're accumulating. And the global web hosting market has doubled from 2017 to 2018, from 32 billion to 61 billion. The most interesting statistic out of all of this is by 2040, experts believe that 95% of purchases will all be online. A lot of us are already doing that with even grocery shopping. Everything is happening online. So 95% of that will be done completely online. AI will replace about 85 million jobs, and artificial general intelligence technology, experts predict that 9 out of 10 companies will start using it. And it goes back to the earlier point that I made. Because of the ease of these technological tools, a lot of companies are incorporating that into their businesses, but that also opens them up to fraud. Why is this important? Because in the last few years, we've come across a COVID pandemic crisis. We've gone through a financial crisis earlier on, and every decade or so, there is a crisis that impacts globally. And we're currently facing one right now in our country as well. Now, why is that important? Because of these trends, for example, like inflation costs, these drive consumers to find cheaper products, which means they go online to find cheaper alternatives, the most cheapest product or service, and they end up in unfamiliar marketplaces, which are kind of like the hub playing field for fraudsters. Geopolitical uncertainty, like the war in Ukraine, drives the need for robust compliance measures, but allows for fraudsters to circumvent measures for payments from sanctioned countries. There's a reliance on buy now, pay later. Credit is very important, which allows fraudsters to naturally gravitate towards these kind of schemes that entice customers in a buy now, pay later scheme. ChatGPT and OpenAI, I think, unless you've been living under a rock, everyone has either used or has basically benefited from it in the last year or so. However, as we will discuss, it creates a whole new level of playing field for fraudsters. And in the recent times, Web3 and Metaverse bring in new threats, because majority of metaverses are decentralized, unregulated, and require minimal checks. Perfect area for fraudsters to go in and complete their missions, so to speak. Crypto winter is something that is a term that's been bandied about a lot these days, and that's on the back of the FTX crypto exchange, as well as the collapse of the FTX crypto exchange and the volatility in the crypto market. So people expect there to be a crypto winter in 2023, which is going to be quite lucrative for fraudsters going forward. And we'll be talking about cryptocurrencies as well. Building on artificial intelligence. Steve mentioned this in our opening remarks, deepfake. It's a term that everybody has learned, has seen videos, and it's quite interesting to watch on your phones, but when they're being used to defraud you, they become quite real, they become quite challenging, and they become quite risky in the sense of how to go about and avoiding it. They're a form of artificial intelligence used by scammers to create legitimate audios or even videos. But normally deepfakes are associated with videos, which is why point 3 is about voice cloning, where they're using sound bites from different people to create deepfake voice messages. And according to McAfee, it only takes about 3 seconds of an audio bite to put together a very convincing AI voice clone. Khurshid then also mentioned about phishing, and we'll be talking about phishing in more detail later on. But this is not something that's new Phishing has been done through letters, it's been done through the Spanish mail, it's been done through emails. But what's interesting now is because of the advent of ChatGPT and other tools, and if you recall in one of the news that I mentioned how FraudGPT and other similar programs have been created, it makes it easier for fraudsters to create more legitimate and convincing fraudulent schemes. Gone are the days of where you could just look at an email and look for misspellings, look for clumsy grammar, and you'd be easily able to identify that it's a fake email. Now with ChatGPT, that's also been revolutionized. Verification fraud. Now, a lot of banks and a lot of organizations are trying to make it easier for their customers to be verified and create accounts. And that creates an opportunity for fraudsters to gain access to your personal information, as well as create fake accounts for you to basically sign up, and they can steal this. So these are a lot of scams that are happening globally, and every other week or so there's something in the news, at least in the UAE, where someone or an organization has suffered from this as well. Moving on from AI, I wanted to talk about blockchain specifically because in order to talk about crypto, you have to talk about blockchain technology. And I'm just going to skim through what blockchain technology is, but it was a revolutionary technological advancement that was supposed to make transferring of assets and recording payments more secure and more easier. And it works, as the name suggests, in pieces of blocks that build a chain that can be easily verified. And if anybody tries to put in an unauthorized ledger or transaction within it, it would be discarded. It would not be considered, as well as it would be very hard to track into once the transactions are recorded to try and hack into it as well. They are permanent transactions and make it much easier for people to conduct business or transact. Why it matters? Because it builds on trust and resilience. It's a very trustworthy mechanism because a block of transactions must be validated. It can't be undone or reversed. It's resistant to disruption because each of the nodes operate independently. But if one node goes offline, the blockchain still functions. And they're used primarily for cryptocurrency and tokens, non-fungible tokens, as people know them as NFTs, and also for smart contracts, which includes the automation of transferring money at regular intervals. But what are the risks of blockchain technology? Biggest risk right now, in light of GDPR, personal data privacy protections, and CCPA that Hussein is going to be talking about as well, is there is no ownership because each blockchain data is equally owned at each place where it's distributed. But for personal data regulation, it requires one owner who is accountable. That's not available in blockchain technology. And blockchain records are permanent. If data changes needed to be made, they cannot be made. So once you've shared your personal data, it cannot be removed. Moving on to cryptocurrencies. Not all blockchain solutions involve cryptocurrency, but that's primarily where blockchain technology comes into play. And the risk to blockchain is the volatility from the cryptocurrency's valuations, the universality of cryptocurrencies, because not every cryptocurrency is accepted and there's limited markets for its trading. Security, it's really easy for hackers to, because of its anonymity, it becomes a bigger threat and target for hackers and malware and ransomware. And a lot of you must have read how Elon Musk lost the password to his Bitcoin hard drive as well. So they're not easy to insure. So he lost billions of dollars, and that's the same thing. You cannot insure your crypto assets at the moment. So if they're lost to a hack or a lost password, you've lost all that money. And lastly, especially from an investigation point of view, really hard to track because the substantiation and tracing. For our businesses, our primary motto is always follow the money. Cryptocurrency makes it really hard to follow the money. Now, to sum up, blockchain technology provides transaction security, but not account and wallet security. And this is really important because a lot of people forget that. They just feel that because of the systems that are in place for blockchain transactions reporting, it is a secure mechanism, which it is, but it still leaves your account and wallet susceptible to fraud. And the distributed database and the cryptographically sealed ledger payments, corruption of data. any value stored in the account is still susceptible for account takeover and hack. So, moving on to crypto scams from blockchain technology. About 46,000 people have lost around $1 billion to various crypto scams from January 21 to June 2020. In just 18 months, $1 billion were lost. And that is only from information that was shared with the Federal Trade Commission. So that number will definitely be higher. Why is that? Because consumers tend to know very little about how digital currency works and how to protect their assets. One of the most common scams to watch out for are blackmail and extortion. Blackmail and extortion scams, business opportunity scams or investment scams, get rich schemes, fake job listing scams where people basically list jobs and invite you to participate, giveaway scams. There was a most famous Elon Musk freedom giveaway on Twitter that took place, and a lot of people were defrauded out of that. That was also part of impersonation scams, and then phishing scams, pump and dump schemes, flash loan schemes. We'll talk about in ransom and malware as well. But pump and dump schemes are how a lot of regulators are now trying to monitor the advent of crypto trading in their jurisdictions. Similar to how the stock market operates in pump and dump schemes, a lot of fraudsters tend to hype up a cryptocurrency to get the price up and then dump it, leaving a lot of people with holding just paperless assets. Flash loan scams are quite common. A lot of crypto traders require funding to buy high and sell low, but they're using it mostly for arbitrage from one trading market to another. They're seeing that there is an arbitrage opportunity in one market, so they try and buy the cryptocurrency from that market, and they use flash loans because they're very short. By the name, they're very short-term period loans, whereby they buy the asset and they sell it, which allows fraudsters to create the market for flash loans, allowing people that are looking to trade to try and get those flash loans, but end up losing their money and their assets as well. And romance and dating scams that have been going on since the advent of phones, etc., is the same thing for crypto. Instead of asking for money, or in Pakistan, that used to happen, I think in the early 2000s, where people were used to ask for reload of internet cards and hours. Now it's moved on to cryptocurrencies. Social engineering schemes, typical to, as we said, the method and the mechanism remains the same, but the assets and the motives can vary. One of the biggest things that people and organizations need to train their employees is that hackers don't need your passwords. No matter how strong your security system, no matter how strong your password, there will always be the vulnerability of human error. They will always try to exploit individuals. They exploit the human loophole to get around cybersecurity roadblocks, and instead of hacking your accounts to steal your identity, they are targeting to hack you. And this will become more clear when we talk about the types of social engineering scams that are happening. But typically, how a social engineering attack normally works is discovery and investigation, similar to how criminals used to target people's houses to go into and break into. Same thing with cyber fraudsters. They identify organizations, they identify individuals, and try and do their homework on which ones are the most vulnerable, which ones are the most relaxed, laissez-faire about their security. Once they've identified their targets, they look for potential entry points, and those are the different mechanisms on targeting from different malware, but they always try and use their knowledge of you to identify the hook that will get you interested in the scheme that they need to run. Once they've done that, we'll be talking about all the different tools that they use to conduct their social engineering fraud or cyber fraud. And once it's done, they vanish without a trace, without leaving much evidence. The interesting thing here is that the average time to detect a cyber attack or data breach is close to 200 days. And if you recall, Khurshid mentioned this in our opening remarks, that it is really hard to detect. And by the time you normally detect, the damage has been done. But it's close to 200 days on average before a cyber attack is even detected. That's a big number. Tiny cybersecurity mistakes cost companies huge sums of money. The average cost of a company data breach is about $4 million. Now, all these terms have been bandied about and discussed, and I'm sure will be discussed later on throughout this webinar as well. But I just thought it would be really helpful to talk about the types of social engineering schemes. So phishing attacks, they are aimed at creating a sense of urgency, curiosity, or even fear in their victims. But spear phishing varies from phishing. It is a phishing attack, but as the name suggests, unlike phishing attacks, which are general in nature, spear phishing is targeted towards individuals and entities, as I was mentioning earlier. And a different, more specific types of phishing is like smishing from SMS and phishing from voice. Baiting is using false promises to bait a victim's greed or curiosity. That's the hook that they're looking for. Piggybacking and tailgating, the easiest example to say that is, for example, if you live in a secure compound or a apartment building, there's security locks or buzzers that you need to enter before accessing buildings. A lot of our companies are secured in that sense as well. But normally fraudsters may dress up as delivery guys or IKEA guys, and they can enter the building. Same thing on accessing secure locations and IT infrastructures. Piggybacking and tailgating is trying to use an authorized person to get access to restricted data. Pretexting is gathering important personal data from a series of questions, and that can be in the form of even voice. They can send you SMS, or sometimes they can call you to say, we're calling from your bank and we've identified an unusual transaction. And they basically want you to, before they can proceed to tell you what that transaction is, they want you to verify your account details. Business email compromise is the same thing, where people's emails are compromised from an organization, and companies have lost over 2.4 billion in 2021, according to the FBI. Scareware is being bombarded with false alarms and fictitious threats. It's the fear that gets people to say, oh, something's wrong with my email, something's wrong with my phone, to basically get you to click on a link. And watering hole attacks are, once again, fraudsters are becoming so smart and are becoming more and more patient that once they do their homework, they try and identify websites that people go to visit to, or that you go to visit to, and either create fake websites similar to that, or hack those websites so they can gather personal information. Nearly 60% of companies have been targeted from phishing attacks, and that's the biggest threat that organizations say is impacting their businesses in 2022 and 2023. This is an old case study, but it was quite interesting because of the global reach of this heist. In 2015, hackers completed a $1 billion heist across 40 countries with this spear phishing attack. And it was so simplistic in nature, where they sent an email to bank employees asking them to deploy this software, which was supposed to help them become more compliant with the organization's IT levels. And once clicked, they had access to the workstations and were able to infect ATMs and get away with $1 billion. Since then, it's become much more evolved, but the simplicity of this attack and the volume of that they were able to get away with and were never caught was quite alarming, and I wanted to share with you guys. So, signs that you may be a victim of malware or a cyber attack, and they're quite simple. And if your computer is working really slow, it's freezing up or crashing. Your storage space used to be 10 gigabytes, now it's down to 7, 5, something like that, and you haven't downloaded anything. Your home page randomly changes, or home page isn't there anymore. The browser keeps getting redirected. All of these things are just simple. Don't necessarily mean that you're a victim of cyber crime, but are signs that there may be something wrong and may be indicative of one. I won't go into the details of the techniques and the tools that we use to detect malware, because they're quite complex in nature. But what I wanted to close with is how to prevent and counter cyber crimes. And for example, for deepfake videos, even though the quality of deepfake videos is getting better, they still cannot replace the originality of someone's demeanor, their features, etc. So always check the quality of the video that you received, the shadows, if they're appearing in the right places, facial hair, etc. Is it there where it should be, or is it gone when the person's speaking in the next minute? Check the backgrounds, because the deepfake is imposed onto different backgrounds, so sometimes it's not easily imposed onto the background. But always be vigilant and observant. Ask the right questions. So if you get a call from your bank, so always, whenever I get a call from my bank or anyone, I always ask them to shut the phone down, and I will call back their customer number, because I'm not going to verify my details to someone over the phone, because that's what they asked me to do as well. And if they are reached out to me for something important, it must be in my records. So once I call their customer care number, it should be on the records and I can talk to someone. Same thing with links. Any link that I receive from in my email, I never open. I always go to the website and sign into my accounts from there. So these are just kind of like simple practices that you should inculcate in yourself and tell others as well. Always call back. Don't respond to questions on the phone. A lot of companies are now creating not just so a lot of companies had started putting labels to whenever an employee was emailing someone outside of the organization. But similarly, what they started doing is when someone receives an email from someone outside the organization, it has a label above on the header that says that email has been received from external parties. Why is that important? Because a lot of times people get emails from their bosses, they don't check the email addresses, and it seems legitimate, the tone seems legitimate, and they respond. And that even happened in our organization to one of our colleagues who was in investigations and fraud, because they were so busy and stressed out with work that they didn't manage to check, and they just responded really quickly. So it's becoming really easy to set up those headers so that immediately that for example, that even if it looks like it's an email from within your organization, with that header, it shows that it's not. So you're immediately aware. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that we all have spyware and antivirus softwares on our computers, but now McAfee and all the other leading antivirus companies have built some spyware and antivirus softwares for your phones as well. So please install those on your computers. Restricting access of USBs and third-party websites is one of the it's difficult to do in an organization, but I think very important, unless and until you have immediate requirement from your work. I think it's one of the good securities. But last but not the least, and the most important one, educate and train people. Educate and train people. You cannot put a price on the most important tool is learning about what the new trends are and training and educating your employees. In conclusion, technology is evolving. It is our biggest tool, it's the biggest asset, but also our biggest threat as well. We need to stay abreast of all the technological advancements, especially from our side, from a forensic accounting point of view, when we have to interrogate such large volumes of data. Artificial intelligence tools and data mining tools are really critical, but those are the same tools that hackers and fraudsters now use to comb through all your personal data information to run these kind of schemes. Fraud detection and investigation analytics is just the beginning of innovation, and we just need to be more mindful of how to work with our regulators and companies to coming up with and learning about these new tools to manage and detect fraud. Thank you so much.
What an insightful talk. Thank you so much, Mr. Gazanfar. Before I move forward, I would just like to announce or give a little hint to our audience today that we are going to have a question and answer session later on where you can ask questions with the panel. And other than that, please make sure that you are listening to the panel discussions and insightful talks given by our speakers, because we will be coming up with a quiz as a knowledge round and you will have to answer the questions over there. Okay, so moving forward, I would like to introduce our our guest of honor, Mr. Hussain Syed, Vice President, RWJ Barnabas Health. Mr. Hussain is a highly experienced professional with over 25 years of expertise in IT and information security. He has a diverse background in working in various industries, including manufacturing, telecommunications, banking, and healthcare. Mr. Hussain's career includes roles as an IT consultant, where he implemented enterprise management systems as a key member. Currently, he is serving as the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer for the RWJ Barnabas Health, where he has played a vital role in development and implementation of the organization's security strategy. Furthermore, he has been an active member of customer advisory boards for leading cybersecurity vendors, providing valuable insights and guidance, establishing his reputation and knowledgeable professional in the field of information security. Please welcome Mr. Hussain Syed to deliver his talk on cybercrimes, emerging trends, and application of digital forensic investigation techniques.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank the ICAP, Ms. Kotwal, and the esteemed attendees for permitting me to be presenting the presentation on cybercrimes today. So as you've heard from Mr. Shah, that there are a lot of threats and they're emerging and there is no end in sight. And this problem is going to fester further and cause more losses and disruptions to the industry. What I wanted to start was with talk a little bit about how the cost of breach is escalating. As you go back to 2000, as you see by different countries, the cost of breach is different. For example, in Brazil, it's about $1.38 million per incident, but if you come to the United States, it's about $9.44 million. I couldn't find anything about breach expenses in Pakistan. I really wasn't able to determine if there's any statistics available that I could demonstrate today. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that not all threats and all our forensic attacks and breaches are the same. They do tend to differ in their motivations. I have a slide to talk a little bit about motivations of hackers and why do they target certain industries in certain patterns. As Ms. Kotwala mentioned, that the losses have been growing as well. And in the last 5 years, there's been about 27 billion reported losses. Now, this is estimated to be 1/3 of the actual losses because a lot of people do not report any incidents from the fear of reputation, regulatory challenges. And if they can mitigate those risks, they tend not to report. There's also consumers, when they are hacked and they are swindled for money, they do not report. They just go by their business because it's more of a challenge to report. So this is going to get furthermore worse because the hackers are now, as Mr. Shah mentioned, been using AI and newer techniques to propagate attacks faster and in a more organized manner. So where we are seeing as practitioners the challenges are, the cybercrime is a business problem, not an IT problem. And you may see that in many organizations, the cybersecurity is delegated to a manager or a director or a CIO level resource, where their primary focus is business enablement. So it creates a conflict of interest for them to actually implement controlling technologies, which would hamper the business as opposed to growing the business or enabling the business. So that balance needs to be developed through the board and the CEO to implement an organization that actually has delegated responsible people who are assigned responsibility for cybercrime, for digital forensics, for accounting crimes, and they have impartiality in reporting those issues all the way up to the audit committee or the risk committee of the board, so that there is a sense of ownership within an organization to fight and mitigate these crimes. Like I said, the cybercrimes and actors and motivations are slightly different. So we have the biggest threat in many organizations is nation states. Now, nation states really do not target organizations where they need to steal money. They're looking to steal intellectual property, trade secret, things that they can use against an organization. So for example, United States had a huge OPM attack from China a few years ago. The Office of Personnel Management of the United States government was hacked. and a lot of personnel records were stolen, including the fingerprints and other biographic information of those individuals who worked for the government. The intent of the nation state that stole those were not to take money, but to be able to utilize that information to now propagate and plan further attacks. As Mr. Shah mentioned, the use of AI and blockchain can be used now to build those immutable and decentralized ledgers to actually utilize that information to falsify identities to commit frauds. Then you have cyber criminals. Their motivation strictly is how to steal money from you, from businesses, from individuals, from consumers. It started out with the consumers where PCs would get ransomware, then people would pay $50, $100, whatever they could afford to get their information back. But then the hackers realized that this is a big opportunity. So the organized crime actually got into it and now have, just like we have businesses, they have businesses where they train people and they have P&L to make sure that cyber criminals are attacking organizations and gaining access into them either through exfiltrating money, exfiltrating information, causing business email compromise, and diverting funds. So some frauds are very simple. All they have to do is somehow gain access to a legitimate email account and issue an invoice with different payment information on it. And if the business doesn't have accounting processes defined to make sure that payment information will not be changed through an administrative check, for example, call the contact that originally set up the vendor record and speak to the person that had originally provided the banking information so that the banking information would not be changed and the money would not be sent to a wrong account. So in principle, it seems very simple. An individual's banking email account is compromised. They use that email account to send an invoice. All they do is just change the banking information. And a business can send the payment to the wrong bank, and the hackers will move that money out of the banking system within hours. And this way, the businesses lose the money. And most businesses only do reconciliation of funds at the end of the month. So by the time they get to reconciling their payments, they realize that the payment was made to a wrong account. Or if the vendor comes back and says, I wasn't paid, it's been 60 days, I haven't received a payment. And the organization goes, no, we did make a payment. And it turns out it made to the wrong individual or wrong bank. And by then, no banking system can actually go back and retract that money because it's been so long. And with the use of Bitcoins and other technologies that Mr. Wazanfar spoke about, it's very difficult to track and reclaim the money. Then comes another fairly big challenge for organizations, insider threat. Now, insider threat could be employees, could be contractors, trusted business partners that organizations bring in to provide services. And they can themselves, by gaining more information about the business, start to plan and orchestrate a fraud within an organization. Could be in the tunes of millions, could be stealing intellectual property, trade secrets, money. There are numerous things insiders can do. And many organizations typically don't have processes in place to detect insider threat because they're so consumed and worried about cyber crimes that they don't typically focus on the employees because they've hired them, they trust them, they know them, they go to parties with them. There's a whole slew of things that happen within an organization that sometimes leads organizations not to focus on insider threat, but it is becoming more pervasive, and it is actually going to cause more money to organizations than actually the cyber criminals. Then you have your hacktivists. Their ideological difference. They want to prove a point. They will attack you. They will disrupt the business. They're not necessarily looking for money, but they're looking to cause reputational harm. They're looking to cause financial harm by loss of trust from your consumers. terrorist groups, their sole purpose is to gain funding for terrorism activities. And in certain organizations are targeted by them, and more so just to gain quick gains of money, and then take the money and utilize for other purposes. And then you have the worst kind, the thrill seekers, the aimless people who want to prove a point and get credits from other organizations that they belong to, that they were able to hack into an organization, demonstrate that they were able to do certain things, and now the organization had to suffer losses, reputational, regulatory challenges. The kill chain is what, and I won't spend too much time on it because Mr. Gazanfar very eloquently spoke a bit about it. Every fraud becomes with reconnaissance. They look for executives, they look at their profiles at LinkedIn and other social media. They try to understand, how does the organization conduct their business? What is the business model? Using that information, they can try to infiltrate into an organization. They would use email, fraudulent email, phishing. They can look for weakness in systems that are publicly facing. They can look at employees that they can help conduct an insider threat situation. And with that, they figure out a way to get into an organization, and then they weaponize themselves to conduct a fraud or conduct a cybercrime by way of delivering small piece of software into an organization, which can get installed on many computers. And when the time is right, they can execute that and exploit the organization, and then the ransomware starts to propagate. They also, since the piece of software they deliver is so small, can go undetected by many organizations because it's a small piece of system. But they do talk back to the hacker organizations, and then they receive further instructions, and that's how they actually exfiltrate data from accounting systems, from business systems, so that they can now extort money from organizations. They don't not only now do ransomware, but they also tell the organizations, we have your data, we have your trade secrets, we have your customer data, we have your patient data, we have your financial information that may have irregularities that the regulators might want to look for. And if you don't pay us the money, we will release that data on the dark web. And the dark web has its own levels of commerce, where certain organizations only barter for certain type of data, right? Some people may look for credit card information, some people look for intellectual property, some look for other type of information. But for an organization, in the end, it's losses, financial losses, reputational losses, regulatory challenges that could result in fines. And so if you look at the regulations, there are a number of regulations that have been enacted by most organizations and countries to combat privacy violations, which result in security challenges. GDPR is probably one of the biggest ones that was introduced in 2016. And the premise of GDPR is that anyone who resides in Europe has the right to privacy and has the right to not be monitored, not be tracked, and whenever they feel like their information should be purged from a system. So the essence is to give the right back to an individual. Now, the difference in this law is that anyone in Europe, so it doesn't mean it has to be European citizen. A person can just be visiting Europe, and that person becomes a European person. And if their information has been tracked, they can request that information to be purged from the system. What that does is it introduces a whole lot of challenges to the organizations, how to implement processes and policies and systems to be able to effectuate this. Because of the large type of systems that there are, it's difficult to do that and requires a lot of resources, a lot of talent, a lot of commitment from an organization from sustaining those processes. California has introduced the Consumer Privacy Act, which is similarly shaped around GDPR, which gives California people more rights. Securities and Exchange Commission has taken a strong position on cybercrimes along with the other frauds, and now requires organizations to report frauds or a cyber incident within 48 hours, and have investigators that go out and actually investigate organizations and see if they did proper risk mitigation for the threats that might be in the systems. Then we have Federal Trade Commission in the United States, and Federal Trade Commission really focuses on business practices. And what it looks for is if an organization in their mission says they do certain things and protect certain information, and they do not do that, then the Federal Trade Commission goes after them, sues them, and actually forces them to pay fines and penalties because they did not hold up to their end of the bargain of what they actually said they would do to the consumer information. FDIC, Federal Deposit and Insurance Corporation, has investigators now that go in, that look at all the AI, blockchain, anything that an organization is doing to make sure that the funds are not being misappropriated. And they can actually shut an organization down, especially banks, where they can have a lot more jurisdiction. Health information is also protected through HIPAA in US. I know other countries have some laws. The states in the United States have laws. And also 71% of the countries have introduced or have approved legislation around cybersecurity, privacy, and information governance. 15% of the countries do not have a legislation today. 5% of the countries do not have data protection regulations. But you can see most of the countries now are introducing regulations, rules, and laws that need to be governed. The challenge now for multinationals would be how to understand, interpret these regulations, and bake them into your policies and your processes, and be able to demonstrate that you indeed are doing the things that the organizations are requiring. Because now they can ask you to be audited by a third party to come in, examine your practices, and actually ask you to fulfill those requirements, or they would either refuse to do business with you or forbid you from doing business in their countries, which could be extremely costly for organizations that have invested heavily in research and development of things. How can these be mitigated? Cyber hygiene is critical, as Mr. Shah mentioned, that you need to have security policies. You have to endpoint detection, encryption, mobile security. People who are accessing websites from your businesses need to be controlled. You can lock down online storage. You can lock down malware sites. You can check for any email that is coming into your organization to make sure it's coming from a legitimate source. It does not have any malware in it. Identity and access management is critical. It's just not about giving users permission to log into the system. It is actually to assess, does the permission you're giving commiserate with the role they have, so that they don't have excessive permissions? Is there any separation of responsibility duty within the access management system to make sure an individual does not have the right? A typical example would be, do I have a permission to enter a voucher and approve a check and be paid? Now, I could certainly go in and enter a voucher, then I can approve the payment and the payment would be made. But if you have check and balance in the system with having more people to approve that, then you have designed a system that can sustain that type of a fraud. Data leak protection is critical. Your third parties, anything that you're doing business with, you may be secure, but your third parties may not be. They may not be following the same practices. So if you outsource some critical business function, you ought to go and assess their practices to make sure they are doing what they're required to do, educating the users, informing them, keeping them aware on regular intervals of what the threats are, having a robust business continuity and disaster recovery plan in place. So if you're hit with a large type of a cyber attack, how can you continue to conduct business? Incident response is critical. You need to have an incident response plan. This plan should entail all type of scenarios that you may encounter within an organization. And it's really need to be tailored towards the type of business your organization runs, so that you're not taking someone else's plan and trying to implement it. You need to understand, so your cyber people, your security people need to understand your business. What is your business? How do you run the business? What are the workflows? And how can those workflows could be compromised? And how to recover from them. Collecting log data is critical. Otherwise, you cannot do any security analytics or digital forensics, because and it's just similar to how follow the money, here's follow the logs, follow the activities in the system. Most organizations are now outsourcing some of the retainer work. They're hiring organizations to be able to come in and help them recover from an incident, whether it's financial incident or a cyber incident. Tabletop exercises, all the way up to involving the board members and CEO, CFOs to come and go through a simulated cyber incident, can help make them understand what are the mechanics of a cyber incident, how to recover from it. The most critical piece in this cyber tabletop exercise, always include your communications and public relations people, because they are the ones who can craft a message out to the public, out to your customers, out to your business partners as to what's going on. Wrong information disseminated can actually cause more revenue losses and reputational challenges to an organization. And in conclusion, I just wanted to show one slide of how you can actually implement and test your blocking techniques. Here you have some solutions that you have implemented into your organization, and you see if you bring in a third party to attack your organization, they can tell you the number of tests they ran. Some went undetected, some were logged, some you were alerted on, and then a number of things were blocked. So an organization should really look for alerted and blocked. How much can I do alerting and how much can I do blocking? Because this is where non-human activity takes place, and you can automatically, through automation, implement those things. Board reporting is critical, and I have a small slide to show how you can demonstrate to the board where you are in your organization in implementing a number of controls that are needed. And you can really make it very color-coded, very high level, because board members do tend not to be technology-centric, they're more business-centric, but this can at least show you that you're covering the entire landscape of cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative session. And before we move towards our next speaker, we have an interesting knowledge round planned for our participants, and I believe the details are now on the screen. I would request Ivy to please share the QR code. Okay, so I would request everyone to participate in this knowledge round and scan the QR code or enter the written key 4227 at slido.com. Okay. We'll give a moment to log in for everyone, and questions will be open for at least an hour or so. So you can attempt the questions as and when the session is going on as well. Make sure whoever gets 50% of the correct answer will be getting a certificate of knowledge, and the others who are attending the session, if they're attending all 90% of the session, will be getting certificate of attendance. Repeating once again, we will be having 2 rounds of knowledge, and both the rounds will be open for an hour to attempt. Please display the QR code on the screen. Okay, let's move forward to our next speaker. Our special guest for today, Mr. Abdul Rahman Waraij, Commissioner, Security Exchange and Commissions of Pakistan. Mr. Abdul Rahman is a financial services professional with more than 27 years of experience His career includes civil service, asset management, risk management, public debt management, financial regulations, and consulting. Mr. Abdul Rahman has served in the Federal Board of Revenue as Assistant Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner Income Tax. He also served in National Bank Public Fund Management Limited, Punjab Pension Fund, and UBL Fund Managers Limited in various roles, including Fund Manager, Head of Research, Head of Investment, and Chief Investment Officer. He has also served as Debt Management Specialist for Government of Punjab and Director General Debt for Government of Pakistan. Currently, he is serving as Commissioner at Securities Exchange Commission of Pakistan. He is a CFA charter holder, certified FRM, and holds a bachelor degree in law. Would like to request Mr. Abdul Rahman to please come share his views on what should be the role of the regulators.
Thank you very much. And I'm so very grateful to the management of ICAP, led by Mr. Ali Latif, FCA, who's the president of ICAP, Mr. Asad Feroz, the vice president ICAP, Mr. Ashfaq Yusuf Tola, who has been the driving force and an inspiration for all of us, Ms. Khurshid Kotwal for her unending energy. And I would like to express my gratitude and my admiration to the two speakers that we've already had, Mr. Ghazanfar Shah and Mr. Hussain Syed, for their very informative presentations. And I would, on behalf of SECP, like to emphasize that information security is now one of the most important priorities and objectives for us. In Pakistan, public sector regulators don't have a very stellar track record at securing their own information systems, but we are now committed to improve our own information security and cybersecurity standards. And at some stage, we want to require the corporate sector, particularly the listed companies, to adhere to high standards of information security and cybersecurity. The areas that have been highlighted in today's conversations are extremely important for any country, for its business sector, for its regulators. It's extremely important to be able to protect and secure their data and to ensure its integrity and credibility. I really admire that ICAP has taken a lead in this area, and we see so many experts who are members of ICAP and who have diversified their skill set and who have now become kind of experts in the area of forensic accounting, forensic investigation, and investigations of frauds through using technology-based tools and techniques, and countering cyber attacks and cyber crimes. So as always, ICAP is living up to its reputation and leading this mission of protecting the information and the data of our important institutions and businesses. Mr. Ghazanfar Shah rightly pointed out that the best thing that we can do is to collaborate with other institutions, to find common ground, and to invest in the training and development of our human resources. So I would once again commend ICAP for taking the lead and showing us the way. And I assure you that SECP is looking at a long-term partnership with you. We want more and more of our officers to be trained in these areas and hopefully become trainers, just like many of your members have become. And with the passage of time, we believe that we can engage and collaborate with other regulatory institutions as well. And I was happy to see the list of participants, and I could see a few officers from SECP who are attending today's session. A few of them are quite senior. I could see Mr. Adnan Daoud, who heads our information security department. I could see Ms. Khalida Habib, who heads our specialized companies division policy department and division. So it's really great that SECP's officers are realizing the importance of these technologies and these skills, and they are making time and effort to train themselves. And I assure ICAP that it's going to be a very long-term and very fruitful partnership, and hopefully our country and our regulatory systems and our regulatees will gain a lot from it. Thank you very much once again to ICAP. I will be attending the rest of this session, although since I have a flight to catch, so I would be on my way to airport. But this is such an interesting, although I'm not a technology expert, but the things that are being discussed and debated are really interesting. So I would be attending the rest of today's seminar, but I requested that I should be given a few minutes to thank and appreciate this initiative before my turn at the end of the seminar, because as I said, I have a flight to catch. So thank you so very much, ICAP, and looking forward to a long-term and fruitful partnership with you in all of these areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, moving forward, we have our panel discussion planned. So I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists, Mr. Amir Nasir. He is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, CPA, USA, LLM from University College, London, UK, practicing advocate and solicitor and member of High Court Bar Association, currently working as partner AUC Law, Karachi. Mr. Shariq Ali Zaidi, who is a certified fraud examiner and a fellow member of ICAP. He is an experienced individual with a demonstrated history of delivering in the accounting, internal, external auditing, forensic and investigation work in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Mr. Khwaja Tanveer Salim, with 26 years of experience at organizations like Unilever, Angro, National Foods, and Shan Foods, specializes in driving impactful transformations. He was recognized as a legend for transformative technology leadership for 3 consecutive years, won the World CIO 200 Awards Grand Finale in 2022, and represented Pakistan as the top 5 CIO at global events. He is currently associated as IT leader at United Energy Pakistan. Mr. Zishan Shahid, CEO Z Shah Business Consulting Private Limited. He is a certified fraud examiner, fellow member of ICAP, associate member of Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, and he has over 14 years of forensic consulting, risk advisory, and audit experience. He pioneered a dedicated forensic service line in Pakistan over a decade ago, and since then he has accumulated significant experience of carrying out fraud, anti-bribery, and corruption, FCPA, AML, CFT, ethics and regulatory compliance investigations in public, private, government, and non-government sector clients. So this is our panel for today. And now I would like to take a moment to welcome our moderator for the discussion, Mr. Imadul Hassan, partner MS Abrar Hassan and Co. He is a fellow member of ICAP, certified information system auditor and practicing advocate of Supreme Court and High Courts. He has around 38 years of diverse experience of external auditor, tax consultancy, accounts, internal audit, and now appearing before various courts and authorities. His main area of practice is corporate commercial finance and fiscal matters, including both advisory and litigations. I would like to welcome the panel, and over to you, Sir Imad.
Imad Sahab, you are not audible.
Sorry, again, good evening from Karachi. This is Imadul Hassan. Now the segment is panel discussion. And it was very elaborative and explanatory presentation by our learned speaker, Mr. Ghazanfar Shah and Mr. Hussain Sayyed. Now the segment is of panel discussion, and the topic of panel discussion is preventive measures against frauds and crimes, relevant laws and role of regulators, which the speakers have aptly covered. But to further dwell on the risk and controls, because due to this changing scenario of digital landscape, a new virtual world of which we call cyber world is creating, and a lot of traffic and human interaction and transaction and contract being executed online. So as Ghazanfar Saab rightly said, that it has created many opportunities as well as it has created various risks. So due to this new virtual world, other than this physical world, new type of criminals have emerged, which we can call cyber criminals. So there are cyber crimes. So further to dwell on this, the risk and controls of this new changing world, I have the distinguished speakers, panelists with me, and they are top professionals having a wide range of knowledge and expertise in their respective areas. The detail have been introduced about them: Mr. Amir Nasir, Mr. Shariq Ali Zaidi, Mr. Tanveer Salim, and Mr. Dishan Shahid. He is sitting beside me. So I, being the moderator, my job is to ask question about from the panelists on behalf of the audiences. Some questions our team have identified, but some we will take online from the audience, and that the team will forward those questions to me. So I start because this new cyber world, as Mr. Hussain Sayyed said, that it cost huge, there is huge cost of breach of information system. And as Mr. Ghazanfar Shah mentioned, that some 46,000 people lost around $1 billion in crypto. So I start my question. My first question is with Mr. Tanveer Salim, and it is in relation to the comments by Mr. Hussain Sayyed when he said that outsourcing a business function has its own risk. And Mr. Ghazanfar Shah mentioned that advance in technology creates opportunity as well as threat, as well as he said that ChatGPT and OpenAI create new risk for merchants. He also mentioned that different tools are used by hackers. So I will ask Mr. Tanveer Salim that how this digital landscape is being changed, and which the speakers have covered, and what tools and techniques can be used by hackers for cyber crimes and fraud, and in this virtual world. Mr. Tanveer Salim, please.
Bahut shukriya, Imad. Thank you very much. Hope I am very clear and audible.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much again. I think, Imad, thank you very much for initiating the session. And I must say, our entire task has been made much more easier by the speakers that have just gone through, wherein Hussain as well as the Ghazanfar mentioned all about those tools and techniques that you have been referring to. However, I just want to touch base on this particular aspect that you mentioned, and that is one of the key elements that we see in today's technical and digital transformation is the need for speed. Speed is the evolving challenge that we foresee in the coming future as well. Speed is the evolving challenge that we foresee and experience right now. Corporations are getting vulnerable. They are very vulnerable right now, and that vulnerability is increasing more and more with this increased acceleration that I mentioned, part of the speed. You mentioned about the AI driven chatbots. One of the very rightly thing that the technology has come into the hands of the normal people, which is a good part because it has made the transformation much more easier. However, at the same time, what has happened is they require more controls to ensure that the relevant data and the relevant information is kept secured and intact. Tools, obviously, they are required. Techniques, they are required. However, one of the key things that we must look is we need to go back to the basics again. And that's what I mean is that how do we run the business? Uh, we run the business by using the board members, which is a tone from the top. And that tone from the top is something which is very much needed right now in case of those cybersecurity policies, cybersecurity tools implementation, techniques implementation, that do mean that there has to be a stronger presence of the cybersecurity skill set within the board members of any organization. That tone defines what tools are to be required, are to be implemented, what techniques are to be deployed within a particular organization, depending upon the risk appetite a particular organization has. I think let's not forget that particular thing that I mentioned earlier, that theory is not the same as the practice. So as we go along and as this whole digital landscape evolve, we'll be exposed to more and more vulnerabilities. This vulnerability landscape is changing drastically, and it's going to be changing at a much faster pace in the days ahead. There were times when we used to see that if you go in those days when I used to be the student and I used to be in the university, we used to have the viruses as the only thing, and those viruses were made usually for fun. We have seen the transition from the virus to the malwares. We have seen the transition from malware to the ransomware, and now what we are witnessing is a transition that is taking place not just from the ransomware malware to the ransomware, but rather is going into the space what we call the killware. The cyber threat actors are now attacking the critical infrastructure of the country. Cyber threat actors are actually attacking hospitals. Just imagine your all medical records which are being digitized nowadays, those getting tampered, and a person who is in need of A positive blood has been given an O positive blood just because the particular information has been uh, tampered with. So that is something which takes us to that particular aspect. It's not just about the ransomware part. It's not just about the hacking for fun element. It has not transformed, even it's not for the hacking for cash element. It has transformed into, I think you might remember about, I think last year or 2 years back, there was a attempted attack in Florida on the water treatment facility. Just imagine if that attack has gone through, then entire vicinity of those people found where that water was, purified water was being transferred, those getting poisoned. And that is something which is going to cause not just the loss of information, loss of data, not the loss of cash, not the loss of money, but rather the loss of lives. And we see what Hussein just mentioned, and we see that increase in the frequency and the gravity of this. And this is just like the intruder is on a constant lookout of the vulnerability. And we are talking about the weaponized technology right now, wherein the malware has entered into the realm of the ransomware. I don't know. I can't see the audience right now, but if I just ask a very simple question to the audience, and Imad, I will need to have to let me know how many people raise hand. Is how many people in the audience have seen Mission Impossible 7, the recently released Tom Cruise movie? Any show of hands by the audience in the ICAP? 10%, 20%?
Tanvi
So,
Sahab, I will like to clarify that these are the threats, but what I understand is that the components of this digital landscapes are your hardware, software, network, data, and these things. So, what preventive measures can be implemented in the shape of physical and logical controls to stop the hackers or from loss of data and use to the criminals, stop the criminals?
controls.
Sorry, was my voice clear?
Yes,
So
you are audible.
I think there was a lag, so apologies for it. Yeah. So in terms of the controls, again, when we go to the controls, we have to go back to the basics. When we go to back to the basic, we still need to see what's the data available right now, and the data shows that still the 43% of the attacks are because of the weak passwords. So that is something where we need to address those things, right? Issue is not about putting in the control. Issue is not about putting up a disaster recovery process. Issue is not about putting up a disaster recovery site in place. Issue is whether those controls are being tested, whether those controls are being reviewed, whether those controls are being looked into on an year-on-year basis, just to make sure whether day in, day out. So, so that's where the role of the, what I call the board will ask the question. So the people at whether they are able to do that, the right thing of putting in the right controls, right tools, right policies, right procedures that can safeguard the interests of a particular organization.
Taking further this discussion, I would like to ask a question from Mr. Ahmed Nasir. He's a lawyer. That for this virtual world and the cyber world, like a physical world, we have various laws and various controls. So for controls, Mr. Tanveer Salim has explained, and I would like to ask Mr. Ahmed Nasir that what are the laws to control, to regulate the activities on information system and to stop this cybercrime? What are those laws, please?
Thank you, Imad. Now, basically, this cybercrime is basically a criminal activity. Now, in Pakistan, we have the cybercrime law, which talks about concepts like phishing or spamming or dishonest use or whatever. So this is a criminal activity. And apart from the cybercrime, this could be a combination of different sorts of crime. Like you have a fraud scheme, and for that fraud scheme or dishonestly or cheating someone, doing things like that, you also employ the use of emails, you also employ the use of hacking somebody's system or doing something. Like the earlier speaker was talking about, like you have changed the vendor details. Now, the company may have a system where a vendor is registered and then but you have to send an invoice physically signed with original signed pen and everything. So it could be a combination of signing a document, sending it to the company, and then at the back end, changing the vendor details like the bank payment details. So cybercrime could be a combination of so many things together. But there is a law for cybercrime. And the issue is that with cyber crimes, you can go after a criminal in the virtual world, track him down, get him, and there are certain punishments which are in the law, like imprisonment, maybe a fine or something. But recovery is something which a business generally looks for if it has been defrauded. Now, recovery is a separate issue. A criminal action might not bring you recovery. You may have to go for a civil action, but generally going after the hacker and trying to recover the money from them is very difficult. But when a fraud has got implications for the public or a larger crowd, then when the criminal agencies like FIA, they go after certain people and then they can arrange for some kind of recoveries by putting up pressure. So the law is there, but then dealing with a crime, prosecution, going to the courts for years is something very different. So it might look very easy or very simple that you have a cybercrime law in Pakistan, and that makes things easy. And especially in a virtual world, tracking down the criminal, getting hold of them may not be very easy. But we had certain cases, apart from a business world, like a porn revenge sort of thing, posting information about somebody to defame someone. So at times with the cybercrime, it could also overlap with a defamation law. Is there anything you or a clarification?
I would like to further clarify myself that what I understand is that this electronic transaction ordinance and this cybercrime act, they talk about crimes when a crime is when a crime happens, and then it defines the penalty and the punishment and things like that. But what about, are there any laws which are there to ensure that this digital world is duly controlled and monitored? This or I want to ask. Amir sir.
Ji.
Amrit sir, please explain the laws which are relevant in this scenario.
Look, what Imad was saying, and then you say that explain the law. Now the law is about a criminal activity like unauthorized use of a data, unauthorized use of a system. Now, unauthorized use of a system includes hacking. So that is included in the Cybercrimes Act, which is a law in Pakistan, and it is there, 2016. Now, the issue is, and then let us interface electronic transaction ordinance. Now, electronic transaction ordinance was introduced to actually give life to the virtual transactions or emails or digital signature or signatures over emails. So that was actually to recognize and authenticate the system of authorizations and authorization of emails, like you have digital signature, like I send you an email from my account. So will that serve a business purpose, or you want a letter signed by me? So with the advancement in technology, the electronic transaction ordinance, it has tended to actually recognize that the emails can be used as a document, emails can be taken as a document, or an attachment sent with an email is a document. So, and then a digital signature is also something which is approved or which can be taken to a court of law. And this has been now actually recognized as part of the law of evidence. Now, the evidence, when you produce an evidence, look, I have signed a document. You produce in the court as a document, fine, it is accepted. A handwriting expert will say, yes, this is the signature. This is my signature, Amir Nasir's signature. But what happens if I have sent you an email? Now, the authenticity of emails can be tracked. There can be forensic examinations, whether I sent that email or not, from which server it was sent, which computer it was sent, and that is an admissible evidence. And for that, there is a forensic lab in Pakistan. Although the law, the Cybercrime Act, it says that the government will put in place many labs. But
Okay,
at the moment, there is only one lab.
Sorry, Amir sir,
which
to
is
cut
law.
you,
Ji.
because
Ji.
I think we will give priority to the questions from the participants. There is one question from Mr. Irfan Shamim. He has asked that what role compliance and risk management department can play in cyber security management across organization. I think for this question, I will ask from Mr. Sharif Zaidi.
Thank you. What I suggest that Nasir sir, because it relates to law, so he will be in a better position to respond to it.
Okay, so basically I understand that this compliance and risk management department, it is part of the management. So can I ask Sharik sir from you that what is the role of board and management, executive management and internal audit in ensuring for taking various preventive measures from these cyber crimes and fraud?
Okay, thank you, Imad. As you know, that ISA 240 states that the primary responsibility for the prevention and detection of fraud rests with both those charged with the governance of the entity and the management. Now, the question is how to discharge this responsibility to prevent entity from the fraud.
Yes.
Again, ISA 240 states that they means those charged with the governance of the entity and the management, are responsible to design, implement, and maintain internal control to prevent and detect fraud. Internal controls include all types of controls, whether these are IT controls, manual controls, preventive controls, detective controls, or corrective controls. Those charged with the governance and the management should ensure that proper policies are in the entity to establishment of the responsibility, then segregation of the duties, documentation procedures, physical controls, assigning tasks to the internal auditors. Controls should be strong enough to make it harder for anyone to commit fraud. However, this should not hamper the business of the entity. Now, remember that today's immaterial amount of any fraud may become material in future if not timely addressed. As we are talking about the preventive and detective measures, I would like to draw attention of all participants towards a recent study of ACFE, this Association of Fraud Examiners, which highlighted that 42%, how much? 42% of employees' frauds are deducted as a result of not internal audit, not external audit, not regulators. It's as a result of tips and whistleblowing. Another study reveals that this percentage is almost 50%. So, you can understand that the remaining 58%, if we take 42 as a correct one, altogether, that is internal auditors, external auditors, regulators, and sometimes accidentally identified frauds, they all together could collect 58% detection of the frauds. So we can say that whistleblowing procedures are a major line of defense against frauds, and audit committees have a role in ensuring that such procedures are effective. They should ensure that staff as well as the vendors, they know how to blow the whistle. Is there any hotline? Do the hotlines and reporting lines are actually working? Is there any employment or business protection for the whistleblowers? You know that we all are aware that despite knowing that things are not going in right direction and malpractices are going on, potential whistleblowers often fear reporting incidents to the management. So again, the board, they are responsible to ensure that the procedures are in place, that all reasonable steps are taken to prevent victimization of whistleblowers. As far as the board and audit committees are concerned, I think that strong internal controls, they can reduce the opportunities for fraud to take place, and this deterrence pursued individuals not to commit fraud because of the likelihood of the detection and then later on punishment. That was about the board and audit committees and the management. Now, just a few comments about the internal auditors. Internal auditor is again a part of the management, but directly report to those charged with the governance. Internal auditors play an important role in assisting those charged with the governance and the management in preventing and detecting frauds. They serve as the eyes and ears for them as they assess and report on the effectiveness of the governance, risk management, and control processes. Internal auditing service is also going through a digital transformation, and process mining technology is driving this change. Process mining technology is a useful tool in preventing and detecting fraud. The next, again, very important is regarding the responsibilities of the external auditors. Again, I refer to ISA 240, which has mentioned about the responsibilities of the auditors, the external auditors, and how to discharge their responsibilities. It states that unless the auditor has reason to believe the contrary, the auditor may accept records, documents, statements, and all informations as genuine. If conditions identified during the audit cause the auditors to believe that the documents are not authentic or altered or modified, or there are, inconsistencies in the responses of the queries from the management and those charged with the governance, then auditors shall, take other steps as mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Shark Saab. And referring to the presentation of Mr. Ghazanfar Shah, that employee training is very important. He has mentioned that for 3 times. Now, I have a question from Ms. Amna Khan. She has asked that how can we prove that a particular attachment was sent with a signed email and not created by someone else? Would Mr. Zishan, would you like to respond to this question?
Yeah,
can I
certainly. No, I read that,
Okay.
the WhatsApp. Mostly the technology, digital forensic professionals do get into, technology, digital forensic professionals do get into the, discovery process that includes analysis of emails as well. But email detection is not an isolated activity that usually happens. What happens in usually forensic investigations is that you take custody of a laptop or computer or a mobile device, and that custody is taken in a forensically sound manner. And using specialized software, you are able to detect mails or attachments that are originating out of that. You can also capture server files as well, the email servers, and from there you can also get email accesses. Like the last investigation I did, the company had a Google Work Cloud subscription, and in that subscription, what we did was we activated the vault methodology, so that it costs a little bit, but it enables e-discovery. So in e-discovery, the suspects are then prohibited from deleting anything, and everything can be forensically, confiscated and then analyzed. So that's the formal way of going about it. But if you just want to engage into a private level confirmation that this email is coming from somewhere, you can also sort of examine the email header, and that's something that that's on something that I shared with the State Bank of Pakistan. If anybody recalls the incident of TAG, which was a financial institution, and they basically forged some documents which were supposedly from some investors. And if you open that email, you can see that that PDF file was basically clearly forged. The signature was added as an image file separately. So some basic examination can be done in that way. And there is every email has a header, which basically tracks the entire flow of the email right from the sender down to the recipient. And there's a whole track. Obviously, there's a lot of technical stuff there, but you can still see that it was a genuine email. So in normal corporate settings, what you need to verify is what you're looking at. Is it an actual email, or is it something that was just made on the Photoshop? So email header is one indicator from that front. But if you're doing a formal investigation, you have to follow, certain protocols in which you examine the computer that is going to hold those emails. So that was just a quick answer to that response. If Amasab, you allow, I have some addition to your previous questions as well.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
It is a panel discussion, and
Yeah.
they're all together.
Just because right now there are a lot of hot topics in Pakistan, especially in the digital bank space, and there's also the startup ecosystem that has been facing increasing threats from cybersecurity. So to your question about implementing controls and internal controls that can be implemented, obviously there are a lot of experts out there who are going to guide on a lot of different things. What I want to point is to a very fine point of third-party risk management that was also present in Hussain's presentation as well. And in the startup ecosystem, it manifests in the in one of the forms where you're dealing with small service providers, and these service providers can also detect, can be skipped in the name of materiality. For example, there's a service provider called OneSignal. So OneSignal basically allows any application to show a notification to the consumers. And what we saw in one of the startups is that there's an unfortunate message that was thrown out to all the subscriber all over Pakistan. And that was a failure not in the application of the startup, but the compromise of that API key of that service provider, which was providing a free service. So this is called an API security that was compromised and then misused to cause reputational loss. So when we are talking about preventive controls, we have to think about these fine points of not just your network, your hardware, your software, but also the security of any small service provider that you're using. So that's one point. And the role of compliance and role of risk management. If you are in a regulated industry like banking, so State Bank is very prescriptive in defining what they want. So they have established a technology governance framework. They want you to comply with that. In that respect, the role of compliance becomes very important because they are the custodians of to ensure that State Bank compliances are being met. But in other words, risk management has to take the lead because they have to think of the entire, organization-wide enterprise risk management as a whole. Cybersecurity is a component of it. So if they start thinking on that front, so they will think that financial reporting risks, operational risks, compliance risks, and then a subset of those are these technological risks and the fraud risks. All of these comprise the entire risk management governance framework. And it's not the role what they can play. It's basically their job to play that role. And that role is usually misunderstood in organizations. And I would like to stress that risk management really has to take a lead in implementing all those controls, not just the CIO. As you know, there was a also very interesting thing mentioned in one of the presentation. There's an inherent conflict of interest as well. Because CIO is looked upon to ensure not to cause any disruption into business activities. So these are just some pointers on the previous questions.
Thank you, Zishan. Very well explained. And I understand that the crux of all this discussion is that we have to concentrate on internal controls. And previously, there were different type of traditional internal controls, but with this information system and virtual world, different types of internal controls are required. All thing is internal control. And now I have I have a question from Miss Alina Ahmed. She has asked that can a highly automated environment contribute to the prevention of fraud within an organization? Whoever wants to respond to this question from the panelists. Anybody?
Imad, I can take this question. This is Tanveer. Basically, the question is that there's a particular environment which is highly automated, then can that help prevent? Primarily, it depends upon how do you define highly automated environment. Let's take the example of Tesla car. We have the driverless cars coming in. That's a highly innovative innovation, and that is currently getting into action and execution as well. Now, if that get hacked, then there's a risk of life because that can go into an accident, that can go into the crashing into someone in some other car or somewhere. But at the same time, when a certain highly automated environment is there, controls and strong tools and techniques which have been deployed to ensure the safety of this continued automation that has been in place. So generally, whenever we talk about any highly automated environment, automatically it comes back along with the highly secured environment as well. However, if there's a highly automated environment and it's not properly secured, then it creates much bigger risk than a less automated environment.
Okay.
I hope I answered the question.
Miss Alina will inform whether she is satisfied with the answer or not, but I am satisfied. And now there is another question from Mr. Saqib Malik. He has asked that what is ransomware? Dishan, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, very crudely, I think Tanvir Saab can shed light on the technical aspirations, technical descriptions of it. But very simplistically speaking, ransomware is when your important documents get cryptographically locked. You don't have access to them anymore, and or some data becomes inaccessible to you, and you have to pay the organization to basically whoever is demanding a ransom. They are saying that if you pay us, then they're going to release that data. There's also one other aspect of it as well. Like, for example, I think there was a ransomware incident where unreleased movies, the master photos or master copies of unreleased movies was basically hacked by the hackers, and they demanded from the studio a ransom in order to not put it out in the public. So in any way, you have something that is represented in the form of a data. Some bad actor has either obtained illegal access to it or has prohibited you from gaining access to it by encrypting it. And then they're asking for a ransom to pay. So that's so the software that allows it to happen is called ransomware.
Okay, so there is another question from Mr. Saqib Malik. He has asked that, is there any online safety guide to counter and curb crimes in Pakistan? And in relation to this question, I will also add my question. And my question will be focused from Mr. Amir Nasir, but anybody can add that, Mr. Ghazanfar mentioned that UAE government has arranged for training of their citizens. So are regulators like SBP, SECP, FIA, or they have issued any guidelines or alerts for the general public to save them from these cyber crimes? Mr. Amir Nasir?
Look, this alerting public is a very I would say, a very limited activity, because let us say that that PTA often issues guidelines or news items about certain sites or things like that. The State Bank has got a mechanism. I think in the past, SCCP probably issued something on in respect of this when the investigation was going on into the securities issues. So, but like FIA, you are saying, FIA does not have that kind of capability at times to investigate crimes. So I think they are also in a learning process. This law came in 2016, and the law said that they will have a special investigation agency. But because of funds, lack of experience, and other resource constraints, the matter was handed over to FIA. Now, if anything is of public importance, it naturally goes to FIA somehow in this country, which is supposed to do everything. But then FIA does have a cybercrime cell, but their capabilities, their resources are also limited, because this requires enormous amount of expertise. There was a question earlier, if you have a very robust or a very highly automated system, will that give you some kind of assurance? Now, look, if you are moving to controls and highly automated systems, then the hackers are also moving in that direction. The sites of the US government have been hacked. So it was a process whereby you keep on improving and try to stay ahead of hackers. But there should be some training, because first of all, like you listen to the commissioner at the SCCP, so they are also in the process of organizing themselves. So with the technological advancement and developments at a fast pace, first of all, these regulators have to keep abreast, and then they'll be in a better position to continuously advise people, give them advisories about hacking or cyber crimes or likelihood of those crimes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Amir Saab. And I think what I have seen from the SCCP, that SCCP, due to the efforts of SCCP, Google has introduced a Pakistan personal loan application policy, there were recently various illegal loan applications. frauds, and they also, in a news item I had read that the SCCP also on and off they visit Google Play Store and Apple application store to review if there are some illegal applications which are downloadable in Pakistan. Mr. Zishan, would you like to add something?
Yes, 2 points actually. One is for sure, State Bank and SCCP both as regulators have been very, active in communicating the issues to the public at large. Or PTA to some extent also has issued some guidelines and warnings to the general public at large. I think the room for improvement there is twofold. One is the extent of that communication. Like for example, we claim obviously that by counting the digital wallets from all these EasyPaisa and Telenor, that we have 50% banked population. But is that population capable of understanding, reading, and comprehending the communications that are being presented by PTA, State Bank, or SCCP? The answer is a no. What needs to be done over there is like a campaign which Telenor started, EasyPaisa started, to educate the people that how frauds are being concerned. So maybe the regulators need to get more funds in order to have an effective communication campaign. Just in Urdu and English press release is insufficient because we have a lot of population which is gaining access to these, increasingly gaining access to these systems, but is not educated to really understand the warnings. And PTA actually needs to do a lot more because we don't need a warning from them that a bank will never call a customer from their helpline. We need an explanation that how are the telecom companies exploited to be able for us to receive a call from even government offices. So PTA needs to do a lot more than just customer awareness. They need to be the regulator that enforces that such things should not happen. So I think this is the one point that I wanted to add. Other point was SCCP and SBP should really partner with STEM universities and keep ahead of the the problems that are facing the customers. So you are not responding to frauds as they happen, but there's some academia and industry and regulator collaboration.
Means
So
proactive
that
approach.
proactive, so that you're getting knowledge from the universities.
Okay, what I understand is that all things, again, I will say that it is about internal control, because I have also spent time in internal controls. So like one of the major internal control usually is the MIS, Management Information System, reports, various periodical reports, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly. So my question is that what type of reports can be generated and reviewed by, and should be reviewed by the management to identify any suspicious activity, any hacking activity, any intrusion in the information system? And Mr. Shariq or Mr. Dishan, anybody can answer this question. Doctor, would you like to answer this, or Dishan?
I think we both can share our views. The use, all it depends on the use of reports. They can generate different types of report, and what I feel that in a current situation, data analytics can provide you variety of information. So abnormal transactions and unusual transactions can be identified through data analytics. Now, what management wants to get from these reports, it doesn't matter whether it's a daily or weekly or fortnightly report. But the important thing is what is the objective, where they feel there are red flags. So based on this, they can get the information, and reports, the frequent reports without their use are useless. They can get the reports on a weekly basis, but unless somebody reviews these and analyze it, and the reports are meaningful, then it will be helpful for the management. Zishan, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think I would shift the answer a bit to cover transaction monitoring and just sort of like a behavioral thing, because it's the idea is to learn from things as they are happening. So wherever you are deploying AI or AI based solution, the solutions are supposed to pre-trained on some data set, but obviously they will eventually get trained upon new transactions. So there are in fraud risk, in transaction monitoring systems, in anti-fraud systems that are being implemented, mechanisms where you can detect detection algorithms. One thing I would advise when non-technical people are evaluating such solution is that all of these solutions are based on machine learning, which has a statistics in its heart. So statistics by definition has compromise. So we have to just not trust completely that it's an anti-fraud system. It can very easily learn itself on a very wrong, different traction. So you have to really evaluate what you are implementing. That's one thing. The other thing I was thinking of is that there are now State Bank has come up with a requirement that there's supposed to be a digital framework, digital fraud preventive framework, and one of the solutions that they expect banks now to implement is basically device identification or some sort of like a biometric or behavioral identification. One of that implementation is that even the systems are so smart that they will learn that if what is my typing speed, for example, on my phone. Now, one unintentional aspect of this is that all these systems are creating a behavioral profile of an individual. So that behavioral profile is as sensitive as the data that I hold. So we were talking about, like, for example, Ghazanfar also touched upon, the problem of having PII data on blockchain, because these blockchains are immutable. You can never get rid of that data. So in connection with your transaction monitoring system question, I think that the systems are becoming intelligent in profiling us, and that profile is as important as the PII.
Okay, so there is a question from the participants. Mr. Hamad Ahmed has asked that, he says that Pakistan as a country lacks a proper risk management governance system. Then how to prevent such cyber frauds, crime without a proper governance system, as cyber crimes are based on human ability, as mentioned by Dishan, and then on advanced technology, which making them really difficult to cater such threats. Who would like to respond to this question from the panelists?
I can take this question, Tanveer here. I think Hamad Sahab, one of the very simple answer is कि वो कह देना कि शिकवा ज़िल्मत शब से तो कहीं बेहतर था कि अपने हिस्से की कोई शमा जलाते जाते. तो बहुत कुछ है. There are lots of things which are not there. You are absolutely right. We lack an absolute governance mechanism at the state level, but it is always a work in progress. Things are improving and things will improve. However, it's just like that we don't stop driving a car in the fear of an accident. The accident happens. We take mitigating actions, we take trainings, we take learnings. We have a constant learning mechanism. We have got the certain signals that are placed on the roads. They have got traffic policemen to impose those legislation or the laws on the road, on the street, and still the accident happens. But again, as due to fear of the accident, we can't stop growing. And frankly speaking, we can't, because currently we are not bounded by the geography of a country, the cyber threats, or the technical transformation, or the technological advancement are beyond the borders. So there's no boundary which defines that cyber attack can take place not in Pakistan, they can take place in Pakistan. So my suggestion is that yes, there will be a work in progress stuff that will happen, that will continue. At the same time, the governance mechanism will improve, they will evolve, and we need to put in all our own efforts to make sure we are actually operating in a digital safe environment digitally.
Okay.
I hope it answered the question, Ahmad.
I understand so. And my question now is to Mr. Amin Nasir, because what I understand is that we are talking about the overall control, whether internal control, external control, regulatory control, to control these cyber crimes and the traffic on this virtual world. So, Mr. Ahmed, do you feel that our courts have because courts are also, I say, is the corrective control. Do you think that our courts also need to enhance their capacity to understand and these cyber crimes? Are there technical persons in the courts to assist the judges?
Now, the point is that there are certain areas of law which are upcoming. Like I'll give you an example of intellectual property. So our courts have been established for intellectual property like just a few years back. And now intellectual property will cover domain names and everything. There have been training sessions on this. But unfortunately for the judiciary, there have been very limited training sessions on cybercrime and the digital world. So the judicial academies actually in Pakistan have to gear up with that, like the lower level of judiciary, judges at the district courts and all that level. A few years back, we did a session on patent law. So it was new for some of them, and which was rather strange. But then a patent in our country has not developed much, the patent regime itself. So then again, you see that this country has got brain drain. We have not progressed in IT to that kind of extent. And then even the businesses, they lack that kind of expertise. Most of the businesses do not even hire high skilled IT professionals. They just want to outsource certain aspects of that. So likewise, judiciary will have to be trained. And now the cases are there, especially not related really to the business, but to the personal issues like cyber stalking, phishing, and porn revenge, and things like that. They are happening, and there have been some reported cases on that as well. But when we go to the courts, sometimes the district level judges would stagger with certain concepts which are related to cybercrime. So yes, there is a need for that. And like there is a provision in this Cybercrime Act where the courts can appoint amicus curiae or the friends of the court or take the help of the specialist. So it is very important that when such cases come up, the courts should take the services of friends of the court, technical specialists, or specialists who can come to the court and 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 help the court understand certain questions. So the provision in the law is there, but I think the courts should appoint a panel of experts to help them in cases as they come to the courts.
Very well said. And now my question is to Mr. Tanveer Salim. Tanveer Sahab, in our physical world, we know the control, we identify a person by his face, and we can ask for his CNIC and other identification. But in this virtual world, people are interacting through the machines, and machines are identifying those persons through their IP addresses or machine numbers. So what levels, what type of control, access controls can be given to employees so that these threats can be mitigated?
I think this is, as far as this IP addresses or the MAC addresses are concerned, these are one of those various mechanisms which are on which the entire information is flowing digitally. And it's just like an address of a location. When you use the Google Maps and you use a location for that, similarly the location is translated into an IP address or into a particular address where it helps you to traverse the entire route and to reach a particular destination. So whatever whenever we talk about the information which is digitally being used or digitally being stored or digitally being managed, then all the digital ecosystem of the controls come into play. So there's no one specific control. Obviously, when you talk about the entire network, there's a network layer, there's a physical layer, there's a switching layer, there's a networking layer, there's a routing layer, and so on and so forth. So there was the whole ecosystem of the control need to be taken up in a holistic view actually address that particular thing. It's just like suppose if you go manual, then you need a security guard who will check, who will stop you entering a particular gate, and will ask for various identification. Now these identification may vary. Sometimes he is only convinced by seeing your name tag, or sometimes he's been convinced by seeing the official visiting card, or sometimes he's been convinced by seeing that you are carrying identification which has got whether you are the authentic person to it. Like the way we have got a whole set of the eco controls, therefore
Okay,
for the digital controls which allows
thank
them to
you.
access them.
Sorry to cut you, Tanvir Saab, because we are running short of time. There is a question from Raza Khan, and I was also going to ask Zishan this question, that whether same access controls which are applied in a LAN mode can be applied in a cloud data security, because Mr. Raza Khan has asked that enterprises commonly make use of services provided by cloud service providers, including infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. In the context of forensic investigation, what methods can an enterprise employ to access logs for the purpose of digital forensics? Mr. Zishan.
Actually, this basically needs to be understood that there's a very, very important clause whenever you are outsourcing anything. And that clause is the right to audit clause. That should be present in even a distributor. Agar koi FMCG, if an FMCG is hiring a distributor, they would include a right to audit clause, so that they would expect some basic level of controls to be implemented in that warehouse. But obviously the warehouse owner is somebody else, and he's entrusted into applying those controls. And but the organization that is hiring them has a right to audit, and that right to audit may or may not come with a advance notice requirement. So in similar way, if you're outsourcing to a cloud service provider, you have to ensure that you have certain precautions in place. As I mentioned, state banks, digital banking framework and the digital fraud, they also have come up with a cloud strategy framework. And I think everyone should read that. It's not specifically to banking sector. And State Bank has prescribed a lot of controls that need to be there in the cloud service provider. So when you have a right to audit, obviously you have a right to carry out, you should have a right to carry out that forensic investigation yourself. But it may not be the case with all service providers, because they may say that if you have an incident to report, you have to follow a certain procedures, and then we are going to perform that investigation for you. And they may or may not share all the information with you. So if you're dealing with a cloud service provider, it's by definition a third party. But if you are yourself a cloud service provider, then it's basically a forensic of the network data for you. So that standard forensic protocols will be applicable. And obviously you have digital forensic resources in cybersecurity who are trained in performing these acquisition and then performing those assets. So at the heart of it, you have to understand what are your contractual limitations in performing any sort of control activity. And if you do have those contractual cover, then you can carry out that specs.
Okay, there is another question from one of the participants, Ms. Bushra Kiani. And this question is focused towards Mr. Zishan and Mr. Tanvir Salim. She has asked that is the establishment of national I understand certification, be solution to produce national database for breaches and associated losses? Mr. Tanvir Salim, or would you like to answer this question?
Can you repeat the question, please?
She is asking that is the establishment of national cert be solution to produce national database of breaches and associated losses? Cert, I understand certificate?
No, I believe this, the question, what I understand is she's asking for having a centralized body, which is more like certification authority within an organization, within a state or within an organization. Will it serve the purpose of putting up the digital controls? Is that the question I have understood correctly?
Yes, I think that's the question.
Yeah. In this case, yes, it plays a very vital role. However, it does not free up the organization to do their own task. When you talk about the state purpose, the objective of the state is to make sure the governance mechanism exists, policies are there, procedures are there. However, the execution of those policies, execution of those procedures down at the organization level are the responsibilities of the organization themselves. So if I am running an organization, then it's my responsibility to make sure that I have got certain internal policies and procedures in place which are aligned with the state policy, state governance mechanism, state certification, and then it actually safeguard my data. State governance mechanism are to ensure the safety of the state assets. We are talking about our own state information, about our own digital assets, with the digital information lying within our own servers, lying within our own ERPs, lying within our own email systems. And so those are our digital assets that we don't want to go into the hands of the threat actors or the activities. So in that case, we have to make sure that our own mechanism is in place. Apart from that, centralized nationwide structured, which is again necessary, but not fulfill the entire mandate of securing our own digital assets.
Right, thank you. Mr. Zishan would like to add something.
Yeah, I think one thing that I recently came across, and this is related to the solution that Ms. Bushra has presented. There's one concern that not a lot of organizations would like to share their compromise. People don't like to accept that their controls were weak. So there'll be a sort of like a difference in gathering all the data about all the potential breaches. It will be good, obviously. Sharing of knowledge is always better, but there are usually open source sources of doing that. And in connection with that, I think any sort of analysis has to be very responsible in Pakistan, because there was a recent State Bank publication that became, in the media, it says that only 10% of IT graduates are employable. Now, that is a very unfortunate statement. So I tracked it back. So it was basically something is quoted in a Pasha, GL, some report of 2022. And that report did not really establish that how are they coming up with that 10% claim. So in Pakistan, if you are trying to set up anything on a central level, you have to have the right level of resources to responsibly share that knowledge onwards as well. Because that Pasha experience was unfortunate. State Bank quoting it was more unfortunate. And so this is something I think it's a good initiative that we want to share and learn from it. But it usually becomes, victim of irresponsible sort of communication and, utilization.
Okay, thank you very much. The panelists and the participants, I understand, as far as I am concerned, it was a very good session. Very good questions were asked, and the distinguished panelists, they very aptly address all those questions. But my time is up now, so we close this panel discussion. Now over to Samra again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all the panelists and our moderator for a wonderful session. And before we conclude this event, I would like the IT to present the QR code again for Knowledge Round 2. And I hope that everyone has participated in the Knowledge Round 1. So this one is an extended version of that round. QR code is there, and you can also log into slido.com and enter the key to answer the questions. Like the previous session, this round will also be open for another hour, and you can answer the questions. Okay, I believe that participants can enter and carry on with the questions, but we should move towards the closing remarks. And I would like to invite Mr. Asad Feroz, Vice President ICAP, to share his closing remarks. Mr. Asad is a distinguished fellow member of the ICAP and holds the same status with the Association of Chartered Accountants in the United Kingdom, PIPFA, and the Institute of Taxation and Management. With an impressive background, he served as a consultant with the World Bank and is now a practicing professional and founding partner of Junaidi Shoaib Asad Chartered Accountants, an independent member of Morrison Global. Mr. Asad is a certified and accomplished IFC-approved governance trainer by SECP and has trained over 400 SECP certified directors. With 2 decades of experience, he has left his mark in multinational and local organizations, public sectors, and nonprofit entities. He is an elected member of ICAP Council and serves as chairman of the SMP committee.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected Mr. Ashfaq Yusuf Tola, former President ICAP and former Minister for State, Mr. Abdur Rahman Waraij, Commissioner SECP, Ms. Khurshid Kotwal, Chairperson DAP and our Council members, Regional Committee members, Honorable Speakers, panelists, guests, and our members, Assalamu alaikum. It brings me immense pleasure to conclude the webinar on countering frauds, cybercrimes, and use of cutting-edge forensic investigation techniques, organized by the Digital Assurance and Accounting Board of ICAP. Undoubtedly, this topic holds a paramount importance in our current business landscape, characterized by rapidly evolving market dynamics. I would like to take a moment to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Ms. Khurshid Kotwal, our chairperson DAB, for her remarkable leadership. She has spearheaded DAB in a wonderful manner. The Data Analytics Program and Technology Assurance Certificate, plus various webinars, have been done in last 1.5 years. Data Analytics Program has been specially a resounding success and has participations from inside Pakistan and also from outside Pakistan. This in its very self speaks volumes of the quality of the program that have been offered by DAB. Ms. Khurshid Kotwal has really helped us in meeting Council's vision and strategy in this very important area. The discussions held during the session today have shed light on the evolving landscape of criminal activities and innovative methods being employed to combat them. In today's interconnected world, where technology has become an integral part of our lives, the challenges posed by frauds and cybercrimes have grown exponentially. Criminals are utilizing sophisticated tactics to exploit vulnerabilities and compromise sensitive information. It is of utmost importance for us to proactively address these threats by harnessing the power of advanced forensic techniques and fostering collaborative efforts. The insight shared by our speakers today, Mr. Ghazanfar Shah and Mr. Hussain Sayyed, were especially amazing. The opinions and the learnings shared by the panelists, Mr. Imad Hassan, Mr. Ahmed Nasir, Mr. Shariq Ali Zaidi, Mr. Tanveer Salim, and Mr. Zishan Shahid, have underscored the significance of cross-sector collaboration. When law enforcement agencies, private sector entities, and technology experts join forces, effective strategies can be formulated. By promoting the sharing of information and cultivating mutual understanding, we can establish a united front against these threats, thereby ensuring a safer digital environment for all. As we progress, let us bear in mind that our battle against frauds and cybercrimes is continuous. The landscape will keep evolving, demanding adaptive approaches. Embracing emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, and advanced data analytics will be pivotal in maintaining an edge over the criminals. I urge all stakeholders to sustain an open dialogue, consistently share best practices, and invest in capacity building initiatives. By doing so, we empower our law enforcement agencies with the necessary tools to effectively investigate and prosecute these criminals. In conclusion, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to our speakers, panelists, and participants for their invaluable contributions today. The dedication and the expertise each of you brings to this crucial issue are what that drives the progress forward. Together, we can cultivate a safer digital world for our future generations. Thanks to Ms. Khurshid and Mr. Zishan Shahid, we will be inshallah holding a two-day workshop on forensic investigations in second week of September for our members and affiliates, which would enable to enhance their skill set in this very important area. Thank you very much, and let us remain steadfast in our collective endeavors to counter frauds, cybercrimes, and employ cutting edge forensic investigation techniques. Allah Hafiz.
On that note, I would like to thank our wonderful audience for attending the webinar and making it such an interactive by asking the questions via chat. Thank you so much, and let's call it off today. Allah Hafiz.